Hi, race fans. I am here with the amazing Kate Gundlach, and she is the performance engineer for Pato O'Ward with the Arrow McLaren Sp team. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, you should be doing great because Pato is having a phenomenal season right now, and he had a phenomenal season as well last year. So we'll get to him in a second. But let's talk about what you do as a performance engineer. What does that mean? What's your role?
So, as a performance engineer, my job is to monitor performance of a couple different disciplines. So, for one, I monitor driver performance. So, I look at how Pato is driving the car, where he racks up with the competition, where we're losing time. I watch his starts, restarts, all sorts of techniques he uses on track. So I monitor that, make sure he's consistent and he's in the right place. And then chassis wise, I take a look at how the car's handling, what's influencing those handling conditions, and then I report that back to the lead engineer, who ultimately makes decisions on what setup changes to make on the car.
Awesome. So it's a lot of data, a lot of technical stuff on your end, which is really important. And we hear things like performance engineer, and we're like, oh, that sounds so cool. As me just being media and race fans. But what does that mean in your day to day? Like, walk me through a typical race weekend.
Okay, so the race weekend for me starts kind of the week before, even in the off season for some events, trying to do preparation and stuff when it comes to parts and processes. But really, leading up to the event, I start on Monday and I start putting together like documents about how the race went last year, like what we need to work on, what areas we were poor in, what we need to carry over from the previous event, if there was something we did right or something we did poorly, just kind of keep that momentum going. So I build that document up, and that way I become familiar with the event itself. On top of that, I do a lot of what we call single case simulations. So I get with the race engineer and we chat about what direction the setup's going to go this weekend and what kind of ideas that he has to try. And so I'll run those single ideas and single thoughts and stuff through our simulation programs and give him an idea like, hey, this is how the car is going to handle. So like, oh, this simulation says this is not a very good change. So let's not bother doing that during the weekend. This one is a positive change. Let's put that in our toolbox in case we have a certain problem. We could try this. So it's a lot of preparation, a lot of homework. So when you come into the race event, you have ideas of what conditions you're going to be dealing with when it comes to weather and wind, and how to pick your gearing properly, if you're going to be trimming, if you're going to do anything aero wise. And then you kind of run through the race weekend. So you have your session. You get there, run through it. I'm looking at where Pato is weak compared to competitors constantly. I'm looking at telemetry most of the time. I'm looking at what the car is doing. Did the changes we make sense? Are they the right direction? What else could we try instead? And I feed that information to my lead engineer. He makes decisions, and we do that all the way up into qualifying. And then we kind of switch gears from qualifying mode to like going as fast as possible. Then you go into the race where it's fast as possible, plus conservation, plus tire savings and fuel savings and stuff like that. So you kind of change gears middle of the weekend, and then you kind of execute for the race. You kind of follow your strategy, you adapt when things change, and you become so proactive prior to the race that whenever you have changes to your process or events, that you're able to react properly.
So a lot of pre-planning, obviously, so that you can be prepared when something goes wrong. Look, can I ask you a question real quick? We hear setups a lot from drivers. We hear that term during race day or during qualifying, during practice. When you talk about race setups, how many of what are you talking about specifically? Just for fans and for people that maybe aren't familiar with the logic and terms. And also I want to ask you, how many race setups do you go through, like, I don't know, on a practice day versus qualifying or something like that?
All right, so when we're talking about setup, we're talking about elements on the car that we can change that are going to influence the behavior and the balance. So we can adjust ride height, how high the car is off the ground. We can adjust how much downforce we have and the proportion of that downforce, whether it's on the front axle or the rear axle. We can adjust spring rate. We can adjust damper settings, like how the spring is controlled on the car. We can adjust anti-roll bar rates. We can adjust roll centers front and rear, and we can adjust elements of the tire. So the angle at which the tires are facing forward, we can add toe, we can add camber, we can play with caster. And there are a lot of hands-on mechanical things that we can do with the car that influence the setup like that. So how many different types of setups we have? So during my homework session, I will run through maybe 20 to 30 different ideas and thoughts and directions. And we might take 5 of those out and set them aside. And then on the race weekend in a session, especially a short one, like a 45-minute session, we might get 2 or 3 of those changes in. And sometimes the race engineer won't even go off of what I've done. He has something else in mind and he just goes in that direction. So you might get 1 or 2 changes in per session. It's mostly how the big changes happen overnight when you have more time to analyze data and to make bigger changes on the car, because there's some things that just you can't do in pit lane because it takes the mechanics too long to do it.
Gotcha. And thanks for clarifying that for me, because there's kind of like if you're not familiar with IndyCar, there's kind of like the thing, oh, they have the same car, don't they? And it's you hear that like versus like a Formula One car where it's all about the aerodynamics and things like that. And then you hear, oh, IndyCar, you have the same, it's the same everything, same setup. And it's not true. It's not the same setup. That's where it differs.
Yes.
And obviously the driver as well. Right? Is that correct? Like when you
absolutely. We have a spec car. So all parts on the car are the same between teams, but there's a ton of stuff you can do to the cars to influence the behavior and the handling. And it also changes per driver preference too. So you adapt the car to how the driver is going to best get around the track. And so one driver is going to drive completely differently than another. So you can't really use the same setup between everybody. And it's all about fine tuning. And when you have a spread of maybe 1/10 of a second between first and 15th, it's the itty bitty little stuff that you really have to pay attention to and make sure it's sharp and perfect and really adapt to the driver. So the setup is a big part of it, but also the driver has a huge role to play in it as well.
Awesome. And thank you for clarifying that, because I think when it comes to IndyCar, there's not a whole lot of information out there and people out there that actually sit down and explain that one of those differences, because I mean, you can in a nutshell, it looks like, oh yeah, well they get to change all of this, but in IndyCar you do too, to some degree. So absolutely. Okay, thank you. That's a question I've just been wanting to know too as well. So perfect. Okay, nailed that one. Okay, let's talk about, just because we always see miracles happen from our end as media, and as race fans, we see a crash and then the car is ready for qualifying or the next day or something like that, but we rarely see the behind the scenes of what happens to get that car in that shape. So where do you come in all of that?
So if we have an accident or something happens and we need to rebuild something, the crew's on it right away. Each crew member has their role and their responsibilities, and they are just so accustomed to filling that role and doing that, it's almost seamless for them. So they're working right away, and I have no issues with the build of the car and how it's going to be put together. That thing is going to be perfect the second it rolls out of here. That's our boys are the best, I think. All of them are across the field. They're all very good at this. But when it comes to what I'm doing in the background, so it's about collecting data, collecting not just data from the car, but like data of why this happened. So what on track, what event made this happen? Whether it was did we have a chassis problem? Did the driver make a mistake? Was there something out of our control that happened? And make sure that we understand completely what happened so that we don't miss anything as we're putting everything back together and getting our heads right for the next session. So part of that is just following through with your processes again. So you come back, you debrief with the driver, you pinpoint the problems, identify it, fix the problems, and then you focus on the next session immediately. So your focus is, this is where we're going to improve, this is where we need to think about things. And you kind of get in that rhythm where you don't really allow yourself to kind of get caught up in that moment where we just had an accident and oh my goodness, it was a big one. You can't get distracted in that sense. So you just keep on the path, keep on the process.
Awesome. Okay. I want to say too, I was talking when I talked to Danielle Shepard, she told me, you know, because simulation engineer is what she does. So she was telling me that, yeah, when a crash happens, you know, for her, kind of similar to you, that one of the other things is, yeah, absolutely trying to figure out what happened so that the driver knows and to help that driver feel more confident. Do you feel that that's a similar case with you as well? Do you find yourself doing that with Pato?
There's a point where, yeah, I'll address the issue with Pato, and for Pato, he is very good at compartmentalizing things and moving past things, and he has a sense of confidence that he pulls himself through very easily. I mean, there are times when, you know, he gets down or other people get down, and there is a process you follow to kind of get them back up in place and kind of get yourself back in the right swing of things. When it comes to quick turnaround stuff like that, if you keep following your process, that doesn't allow you the time to kind of like to get caught up in the moment. And that's the same thing with the drivers too. So just keep moving forward, keep them focusing forward, keep them moving forward. And the less you dwell on the problem itself, the effect of the problem, the emotional effect of the problem, then the better off you're going to be going into the next session.
Speaking of kind of moving forward, winning is obviously the goal, right? For the team,
Yeah.
for the driver. However, it doesn't happen quite often. I mean, you know, unless, you know, you're just having a super crazy season. But, you know, winning is, you're actually, if you think about racing on a grand scheme of things, it's you're not winning as much, right? I mean, that's just how it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
It's
on the
very hard.
scale.
Yeah.
Very hard. So when it does happen, I'm sure it's great. But when it doesn't happen, what how do you mentally just recollect? How do you regroup with the team? How do you stay motivated to the next race and the next one and the next one when, you know, let's say you've had a bad race weekend?
That's a really good question. That's really difficult to kind of put into words, and it's something that it's taken a long time to get to that level of how do you adjust when things go poorly? How do you keep on track? How do you restore your confidence when something happened? And it takes a lot of thought. It's not something that's very easy to do, but again, it comes back to working on the process and then taking pride in making sure that every step of your preparation is done to the utmost of your ability and as perfect as you can be. Because once you focus on that one small step and carry on to the next one, you can start to build your confidence back up that way, knowing that you've done a good job here, here, and here. But man, it is difficult to pull yourself out from that. And it can be difficult too if something that motivates me is my team. And because I know that if I feel down and if I don't feel like I've done a good job, then I know that negative energy spreads faster than positive energy. So staying positive and looking forward and staying involved and in the right mindset is super important, not just for you, but for your team. So I think that following your process and taking pride in what you're doing every step of the way and then maintaining a positive attitude is the only way to pull through some of those tough times.
Yeah, absolutely. I can totally see that. It does. You do have to be careful with that negative attitude because I feel like sometimes too you see some drivers and some teams have like bad luck after bad luck, and you're like, oh no, what is, you know, you're just like, oh, please, yeah, you're just like, oh, you feel for them. So, but let's lift up the interview a little bit because we're talking about all these all these problems and things. Let's talk about tell me about your favorite part of being a performance engineer.
So this is a role that I've worked up to get toward like my entire IndyCar career, and I am absolutely in love with every part of my role that I do. But I think my favorite part is just being involved with the setup of the cars and the simulation work and kind of thinking of ideas and seeing those ideas come into action and then monitoring those live and saying, oh, that did work. Oh, that did do something cool. Okay, we are moving forward. And it's not always, you know, good. You have to take the good and the bad. It's like, oh, that didn't work. I wonder why that didn't work. And now you just learn more and progress more. But it's the technical side and the development side that I really enjoy.
And that's got to be really cool for you, I'm sure, to kind of see when you're in there and you're making, you know, even just the prep before and then seeing like the prep and then the on track and then the changes and then you know, especially if it's like a race win and you're like, wow, I just, I just helped out
Mhm.
with that whole process from here to here. And it's right there. I think that's really cool. You must be happy, and that must be satisfying to you.
Yeah, I absolutely love what I do. Yeah. Yep.
Awesome. Okay. Okay. So on the flip side of that, challenging, what's the most challenging part of your job?
I think the hardest part is kind of keeping up with the schedule.
Hmm.
It takes so much energy and time to come up with the ideas and testing and the homework before, and then at the track, the analysis afterwards. By the end of the weekend, I'm just completely spent, but you can't afford to be completely spent. You have to jump back into it on Monday and get ready for the next one. So it's like after that 3 race in a row period, or even like after Indy or something, it's just, that's the hard part, is I am so tired, but you have to pick up and keep going. And then once in a while you get a break, and take some time to recover. But I think the schedule, keeping up the schedule, is probably the hardest part.
Speaking of schedule, man, COVID has real COVID. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. I talked to some people, and like certain, like some of the drivers were like, "Oh, I love it," because you just when it was when COVID hit, it was such a crazy intense schedule. They're like, "Oh, I love it," because you just go boom, 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 and you're done, and then on to the next one, on the next one. And then it's funny because now you're seeing some of the drivers this season kind of say like, oh, I kind of like it when we had an extra practice. Oh, I kind of had it when we had an
Mm.
extra you know, like Joseph Newgarden has been saying that. He's been, you know, talking about that this season, just how it's good to have that extra. I don't know. I like it when we have two practices and another practice and a qualifying, and you know, instead of a condensed one. What do you prefer? Because you are very much on the pre side. So do
Mhm.
you prefer to have obviously that extra time, or is it kind of like more time, more problems to create?
That's a good point. You can't have more time, more problems, but more often than not, I'm telling myself, like, I wish we had another practice session. I would love to have a day to test some things and to run through some stuff, especially if you have problems or something goes wrong in the session that limits your track time, that's out of your control, like red flags or um, something with the car. Who knows, right? I would rather have more sessions. I love, but also personally, as an engineer, I love testing, I love developing, and I love, I would be fine with that. I know that it's not always for everybody, but I prefer more sessions. Yeah. Yeah.
How about during the off season? We don't you know, we often don't know what goes on during off season because well, everyone shuts down. But from the media perspective and from, you know, the fans, you're not at the racetracks. Sure, we'll see some testing and things like that. But what are you focusing on the most during off season?
Um, I'd like to say that we focus on rebuilding from the events that we've had and kind of processing all the data we didn't get a chance to process, but really we are on it for the next season already. We have ideas and thoughts and projects that are being put together during the season we don't have time to work on, and those get saved for later. So you've got to do your off-season projects, whether it's development with a car or development with some area of the car or even like pit equipment, and testing and development of different ideas we haven't tried. That all happens the day we get back. So we have a break afterwards, like a week break. Typically,
Mhm.
most teams take about a week after the season, and then you are into the next season the day you walk in the back in the shop. Even for Indy preparation, when it comes to even component prep, starts
Mhm.
probably about not November, the year before.
The year before, yeah, that yeah, you have to get ahead of things, so it's yeah, you're already on to the next one. Got to keep that momentum going,
Yeah, it
so
does not slow down
it
one bit.
never slows down. I'm sure it doesn't. I know. Woo. Okay. I want to talk about something real quick. So we often hear a lot of the drivers talk about how when you're an IndyCar driver, you're a complete driver because you drive on ovals, road courses, street courses. Um, what about for you? Because as an engineer, do you feel like you're for lack of a better term, they're just a more complete, you know, engineer because you are also adapting to the ovals, to the street courses, to that? Do you feel, you as well, you're adapting, they're adapting, and you're adapting behind the scenes? So yeah.
When it comes to being a well-rounded engineer, I think that it's not so much the tracks that you're going to and the types of tracks, but it's your responsibilities and roles. So I think what makes a well-rounded engineer is someone who can take a look at tires, manage tires, and look at brakes and corner cooling and chassis development and making sure the driver's good, and gears and fuel and strategy, and be able to step into any role on the team and be able to perform in that role. I think that's what makes a well-rounded engineer. And for IndyCar, because there are so few people on one car, few engineers per car, each engineer has to take a lot of roles and responsibilities. So if I go to a team that has a bigger group, like, oh, I can do all of this. What do you want me to do? You know what I mean? So it's,
Right.
I think that you will still adapt. Like, I'm not adapted to endurance racing, or I'm not adapted to working with stock cars in the NASCAR world or oval track stuff, but it's something that I can learn and process. But because I have experience in all these different roles in the team I'm on, I think that creates a more well-rounded engineer. I think IndyCar engineers are super well-rounded in that they have to do so many different roles.
That's cool. It's so you, in a way, you match the drivers. It's
yeah,
that's really cool. So the drivers do it, and you kind of have to do it too. That's perfect. So you're both on that level. Okay, awesome. Okay, I want to talk. I want to get into Arrow McLaren Sp, the team. But before I do, I want to say that you, and we're going to get to your career highs too. Before we get into that, you made a huge leap in your career. You went from Chip Ganassi Racing, one of the most successful teams, to basically a new team, a hybrid team, Arrow McLaren Sp. What motivated you, and were you nervous going into an entirely new team?
Well, to be honest, when I was at Ganassi, I worked I was there for 6 years, and I had the same role for those 6 years. And I wanted to move up and move out of that type of role, and they didn't have anything available for me there. So I had made it known to everyone who works there, I think, that I wanted to move up and I wanted something else. They didn't have something for me. So at the end of my contract term, we did not resign. And so they kind of just let me go. And I think it was one of the best things they could have done for me, because they let me go explore the roles that I wanted to be in, because they couldn't provide something for me there, or they couldn't guarantee it. So I'm super thankful that we parted ways, in a sense. So in that case, I went and I talked to every team I could. I went down and talked to Penske. I talked to just about everybody to see what's available and what role I want to be in. And when I came to Arrow McLaren Sp, at that time it was Schmidt-Peterson Racing. I already knew a bunch of the people here and felt very comfortable with them. My husband used to work for Schmidt-Peterson Racing, so I was very comfortable with everybody here. I felt a good vibe. And when they said they have the role, they described the role, I'm like, that is exactly what I want to do. So please consider me for this role. And they did. And they gave me an offer and I accepted it. And yeah, I was very nervous, because it's a jump in the deep end, in a sense. It's something I haven't done. I feel like being overwhelmed a little bit, or at least thinking like, okay, this is outside my comfort zone. There it is, outside my comfort zone. I'm going to push myself here. And I was able to push it. I keep pushing myself every day with it. And I couldn't be happier, because every day, every event, I grow more and more and more in this role, and I'm really excited with it. So yeah, it was really nerve-wracking at first, because I hadn't done it, but it's outside the comfort zone. You have to do it if you want to move up.
No, it's so true. I know there have been famous people that have said things like, the minute you're comfortable is when you know it's time to change. So no, that's really cool. And let's talk about Arrow McLaren Sp for a second, because the team is so just my interaction with them as media has been great. They've been so positive. They've been such a great team. They've been so open. They seem to be well connected. When I interviewed I had a chance to speak to Zach Brown, who did the first season, like the first, like before, you know, last season when he just came in, and I asked him like, what's this, you know, secret to kind of, or what's the key factor to running like a F1 and IndyCar team? And he said it was just communication, and that the team is so strong throughout both teams, like the F1 and the IndyCar team. So I'm just going to ask you, like, what makes the team so great? Because you guys are obviously, especially for a new team, you all seem to be kind of in sync with each other and with the drivers as well.
I think what makes Arrow McLaren really, really great and really good is that they started with a really solid base. So Schmidt Peterson Motorsports, way back in at its earliest, has cultivated this environment that is a nurturing environment, in a sense, and everybody gets along. The egos are in check. There's no one with a secret agenda, and it's always been like that here. This is the impression that I get, and that's one of the reasons why I was so attracted to this team in the first place, is because the energy I thought was really good and really positive. And I think that starts from the top down. So I think that is something that management installs, that they hire the right people that they get a good vibe from, and that just builds an even better base. And it's not just a good vibe. Like, these people are high performing people. They're super intelligent. Some of the smartest people I've ever known in my life work here. And they've always had these amazing ideas and these amazing directions, and it just hasn't always worked out for them during the race weekends in the past. But now we have opportunities to carry that momentum that's been coming and that's been here for so long, and make it a little bit more in the limelight.
What would you say is the most rewarding part of being part of the Arrow McLaren Sp team?
The most rewarding part for me is just being part of I'm just so lucky to be part of this team that already has this momentum going forward. I think it's a really special group, and I'm just really happy to be part of it. It's one of the more supporting and exciting places to be, I think, because everything is new and it's developing with the McLaren help. And that's really exciting. So you're taking a really solid building block, really positive, well-rounded, excellent group of people, exceptional group of people. And now you've added this technical development, this technical partnership with a Formula One team. And it's really exciting. It's continuing to grow. Last season, just kind of figuring things out, figuring each other out. And now it's like, okay, now we're going to turn it up. So it's been really, really, really cool seeing that.
That's awesome, because I was just getting, my next follow-up question was going to actually be, what's it like? I mean, you work for McLaren too. It's like the McLaren brand. Do you get a sense of pride with that? Like, are you like, well, this is cool, you know, this is something special?
Yeah, for sure. And it being closer to the Formula One team in that sense this year, and is pretty special. They so McLaren Formula One handed out these giant books from last year, the 2020 books, as like an end of season thing, and it includes IndyCar and Formula One into one kind of like employee. Here's a nice little record book, you know, that you can look through the races, and like, this is the media's put this together. So it included both of us. Like, man, this is really cool to be included next to these guys, and like to see Zach Brown on the race weekends and stuff is impressive and cool. And I think one of the best parts is working with the people that have been dedicated to this program from the McLaren side. They're coming over from England every now and then, so they'll come by for a race and they'll come back. And there's one that is permanently based in San Francisco, actually, and he was Lando Norris's performance engineer, so he's been a great role model to look up to and to see like how to behave in this role, but also to kind of see the bigger picture and expand your ideas. And you can learn so much from these guys, and they're all really, really good people. Like, they're the people you want to go hang out with, you know. So it's been fun to add that new level of expertise and just really good people to the group.
That's awesome. That makes me so happy, because you do see the collaboration between the F1 and the IndyCar a lot all over social media, whether it's the drivers like being there for each other, or Zach Brown having, showing up, like you said, at the IndyCar races and things like that. So it's really cool. It's really cool to see that. And I'm glad that you're getting that positive vibe there, because that's the kind of vibe you get from McLaren. I feel like that's, you know, and Arrow McLaren SP. So it's good to see it continuous, you know, over both. Okay. I want to talk about Pato, because, oh, Pato, you know, Pato O'Ward, such a amazing talent. But I want to talk about one thing too. So I want to talk about the driver and crew relationship a little bit. What's that like on your end? And I'll tell you, from our perspective, we have our idea of what Pato is like, right? He's super talented, super charismatic, has a fun energy, is you know, it's contagious. And we don't get to see the other side of him, which you probably do. So what is he like behind the scenes in the garage?
Well, honestly, he's not much different than what Pato does. Is not the type of person who has two different faces. Like he does present himself very well for media and for fans. He's very humble and available, and that's just because he's a good person. And he carries that same good energy. He's very silly. He jokes around a lot. He makes a lot of noises. He likes to laugh a lot. He's a very charismatic person. Like you know, when Pato's in the room, you can't miss him. But he's come from, he has a really strong background, a really strong family background. And he, like the morals and the ethics that he carries with him are the same that he presents to the world as he presents with us. You can read him. He wears his heart on his sleeve. He's very honest. He appreciates the hard work everybody does. He can be a little difficult sometimes when it comes to the simulator, and he knows that. So we're working on it.
Well, no one's perfect.
No one's perfect. No, he's almost like this. He's got an ethereal vibe in a sense. Like he's his great proprioceptive awareness. So his problems in the simulator is that he can't feel the car, the sim moving one way, so it frustrates him. But like that's how he describes things, is he's always moving and expressing himself, and he's very aware of what's going on around him at all times. He's also extremely disciplined and motivated. So he has his budget, he has his exercise routine, he eats a certain way, he goes to bed at least, very structured, and manages himself very well. But he's always open, and he likes things. He is very efficient with his time. So he doesn't like to go on about one thing. So I have to think about how I'm going to structure, how I'm going to say things to Pato, and it's not going to drawn on, or I'm not going to go into a deep dive explanation with him. It's got to be very like, okay, where do you suck? Here, here, and here. You're fine here and here. Don't worry about that. What about this corner, done. And he goes out and he fixes it. So he's a pretty special human being.
He is. That's cool. That's good to know. So I can be long-winded sometimes, so I have to keep that in mind next time I interview him at our press conference. Keep it concise. Yes.
Very excited.
Yes, right here. Okay. Totally true. See this, I'm getting some pointers. Thank you, Kate. Thank you. Okay, let's see. I was going to ask you too, when things go wrong, or does he stay the same when things, sometimes, is he one of those drivers, like things go wrong and he's like immediately like, I got to figure this out? Is he, or when he wins, like, does he change, or is it this, what you see is what you get when that happens?
There are times when things go wrong, like during a race, if we get stuck behind somebody or something and things are going downhill, that he can start to get a little bit down a bit. And we know that. We understand that from him. So we're building him back up, and we've had conversations about that, because that's where champions excel, right? When things go poorly, they're still champions. So they're still on taking a 10th place car and making it a 10th place car and not finishing 20th. Because of problems. So it's about not spiraling out, not letting yourself get distracted by that. So it's part of his learning process as well, because he's only 22. He does have an extensive racing background, but he's still developing. And that's kind of our job, to kind of help him keep that championship mindset even when things go poorly.
Awesome. Okay. So you've already said it there, that Pato is special. And I mean, there's no doubt he came into IndyCar just taking on, everything from day one. He's been with you and the team. But you have worked with some pretty big race car drivers, meaning like Scott Dixion. We'll get to him in a second. But so when you see Pato and he's doing well and things like that, do you see something? What is it that you see in him that makes him so special? But also, there's something he clearly has an edge over other race car drivers. I can't figure out what it is. He doesn't like to say it in our interviews. I keep trying to figure out a clever way without him giving anything away, but what do you think it is about him that does? And by the way, like it's no secret, I remember the first time he tested at COTA, last season, Joseph Newgarden was like, keep an eye on Pato. Like, all the other, I mean, not just Joseph Newgarden. I mean, the Penske drivers were just like, keep an eye on Pato. He's the one to watch. He's the one to watch. And he's always kind of been like that. But what, because you have worked with legends, you've worked with living legends. So what gives Pato that extra edge?
There is, for one, he's got a phenomenal driving technique. Like he has phenomenal car control. You see things on his steering trays that make you go, oh no. And he comes in, he's like, oh, it's fine. Are you serious? So he can react very quickly. He has a great idea of what's going on with the car. So his handling and his driving style is extreme and is rare, I think. But also I think he just wants it more. And he wants it more than the guy he's chasing right now. So it's that raw red energy that comes through that's what he has. And I don't know where it came from or how it came about, but he has this confidence about him and this drive and this desire. And in the moments, that's stronger than the next person. There's nothing special he's doing with his technique, his car handling, but he just wants it really, really badly, I think. And it's I don't know how else to explain it, but that's what I see.
Yeah, I can see that. And I will tell you, I want to tell you something, because from day one, from our very first press conference that we had with Pato, he has been super confident in the car from day one. In the team, has been so positive. You guys may have a bad race weekend and he's still confident. I was able to talk to him, interview him after he won his first race there at Texas Motor Speedway. And I kind of asked him, I said, you've been with Arrow McLaren Sp from day one, and has your confidence level, has it changed? Has it evolved? Are you feeling more comfortable? And he actually said it's the same. And I thought that was incredible for him to say that. And what does that feel like for you to know that your driver, that you work with, is just, going in every race weekend that confident and that feeling that great and values the team so much? That's got to feel good for you.
It's amazing. And I've been spoiled with that too, because I worked with Scott Dixion and he was the same way. He's an element that comes in and you don't question where his head is that weekend. It is on winning that race. And I'm spoiled to have being able to work with those two guys. And Pato too, it also makes me feel good to know that I'm working super hard to make sure that he has the best package he can to perform. And everyone is on the team, but knowing that he's doing his job in the car, and he says, no one's going to push me. No one pushes me around. I'm not gonna let anyone push me around. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do the best that I can. And he admits when he makes mistakes. He admits when that wasn't me. That was my fault. It's on me, boys, kind of thing. It's knowing that he has that drive, that he's going to perform the best that he can, because we're all working our butts off and I know that he is, and he has the accountability to say, like, you know what, I had a bad day. I'm sorry, guys, that's on me. I think it makes me feel like he's doing his job, I'm doing my job, we're all working for the same goal.
That's good. I love that. Well, good. It should make you feel amazing. Maybe you're the secret between Scott Dixion and Pato. Maybe that's you. Well, maybe that's why you're spoiled. Maybe that's what it is. Okay, I figured it out. Okay. All right. Okay, enough about Pato. Let's talk about Chip Ganassi Racing, because I want to touch on that a little bit, because it was such a big part of your career. You did some amazing things there, and you made history with Danielle Shepherd.
Mm-hmm.
You and her both were the first women to win an IndyCar Series championship with Scott Dixion from the engineering side. Congratulations, that's huge. I know that was that was 2018, but that's huge. And you spent a good amount of time there with Scott Dixion as the assistant engineer. What was your biggest takeaway from that experience with him?
Working with Scott directly, one of the things I take away, like, he is an absolute professional. He's almost like an element of the car that you just rely on to be perfect. It's something you don't really have to worry about there, is because Scott is a seasoned professional. He's a previous champion. He's an Indy 500 winner. He knows how to get the job done. And it's something that you rely that he's going to do his job, but you can also take his feedback as there's really nothing else I need to dig into here. His feedback, you take it as it is. And I think he's an absolute class act. His family is an absolute class act. They're just absolutely wonderful people. And he has a really good energy about him as well. And I think that he brings that to the team, and the team works really well together too. So again, it's another high performing group. It's I think the driver kind of leads the group and leads the team. I think he did a great job of leading that high performing group together. The mechanics were phenomenal. The engineers I work with, Chris Simmons, is phenomenal. So it's just a good group of people he put together.
Nice. He's such a living legend, and to be part of that has obviously got to mean something to you as well. When you did make history with Danielle, is that something that just, you're like, bucket list? Yes. Like, you're crossing off the things, because that's a pretty big accomplishment, you know?
Mm-hmm. It's pretty impressive, and to win a championship, and it's difficult. Like you said earlier, like, winning is really rare with so much talent in the field right now. And one thing I love about IndyCar racing is that anyone can win. We've had 6 or 7 different winners so far, which is phenomenal, and it's amazing racing. So trying to compete with that level of excellence in the field and winning is so hard. So whenever if you do that again and again and again, at least just finishing the top 5 and suddenly you're fighting for the championship, it's a pretty amazing feeling. And at the same time, what that experience has taught me is to carry that kind of mindset forward to where I am now, because we were running for the championship last year and we're running for it this year, and we plan to keep doing it. So it was a good way to learn how to think and how to keep your mind focused and keep looking, keeping the big picture in mind, but making sure that your processes are in place, are done properly. So I thank him for that, because we're running for the championship now.
Yes, I know. Okay, I want to ask you, I'm going to put you on the spot for a second, and you can say no. Do you when you go from Chip Ganassi Racing, and now you're Pato O'Ward's performance engineer, do you know secrets? Do you share the secrets? Because you're like, I know what Scott's setup is. I know what setup he's going to use. Pato, we're going to do this because it's going to undercut him. Like, do you ever do that?
That's one thing that I take pride in myself, is that I don't share information across teams. And I think it's really important, because people work across different teams, and we're all one giant, everyone's worked with everybody in the field. And one thing I take pride in myself is that I don't carry information on from other teams. The things I do talk about is what silly things happen at Ganassi. So things my silly technical director would say, and Julian, I love Julian Robertson, but he says some silly stuff. And so I use that, that's what I talk about, just things that are light and things that don't give us a competitive advantage over the next, because I would rather beat people fair and square than to just say like almost like, oh, hey, they were doing this, they were doing that. And I think the team is that way too here. So I think they want to do this on their own.
That's actually a really good point. I'm glad you know, because you hear about this, especially you hear it and you're like, oh, are they giving the secret? But that's good to know. You're a good person, Kate.
To a fault.
To a fault.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The people at Arrow McLaren Sp are like, come on, Kate. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, wait. Speaking of funny stories, do you have any fun Pato or Dixion stories? Do you have any fun?
Pato or Dixion stories? Dixon's are pretty chill, because he's that kind of chill guy. Yeah. Actually, one thing is, it's not a very funny story, but it's very cool. What Scott did was, someone from New Zealand messaged me. They found me on Facebook, probably through my dad. And
of course, but I love your dad. I love your dad. He's amazing. Yeah. Tim, I love you. You're amazing. Love him. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So, and she started talking to me, and she had asked that Scott talked to her dad, who was in hospice and didn't have much, you know, he was diagnosed with cancer. So he didn't have a lot of time left. So Scott put time out of his day to go talk to this guy. He talked to him for about an hour on FaceTime, just out of the blue, just someone from New Zealand who wanted to talk to him. So Scott's that kind of guy.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
not a very funny story, but that's a touching story, and that makes me think very, very highly of Dixion. I mean, like I didn't already, but like he's just such a class act. Funny Pato stories. There are so many funny Pato stories. Pato does all sorts of goofy things.
Well, now I'm learning that. Yeah, he seems. But you know, in the media, he's a little bit more pulled together, because
he's very put together when it comes to media. And I'm so impressed by how well he speaks and his enthusiasm and how humble he is. Yeah, but he's a goof.
And he's always over it too. I mean, not over it, but you know, all the drivers are, because it's media and they already have this kind of thing like guard with them.
Yeah,
you know. So yeah, he's a goof. That's funny. That's cool.
Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah. Good. And I thank you for sharing that Dixion story. That's a beautiful story. We don't hear a lot about the drivers, you know, in terms of their personalities and things like that. So that's always good to hear. Okay, let's talk a little bit about, you've had some iconic bosses, because you've also worked with Rahal Letterman Lanigan, sorry. Every time I say it, okay. And of course, Chip Ganassi Racing, and now Arrow McLaren Sp. Who's been your toughest boss?
Toughest boss. I'm gonna say, I think Chip has been the toughest boss, and it's because he has this. Well, we're both from Pittsburgh, and I put that on top of my resume when I applied there. But Chip has this like Pittsburgh blue collar kind of vibe and attitude, and it's tough. You know, he expects certain things. He doesn't really budge on those very much, so he comes across as a bit tough. But I think it's just like the Pittsburgh blue collar kind of attitude. Like I like Chip a lot, and he was always really good to me, always say hi to me, even after I left Ganassi. Like, we're still high-fiving. He still comes up and talks to me and wants to, you know, just see how I'm doing. So I think the world Chip, but I think he's pretty tough.
Yeah. I
think Bobby Rahal is also tough and expects a lot. But it's a bit more easygoing kind of vibe, where Chip's a bit harder around the edges. And at Arrow McLaren, I really enjoy working with Taylor over here at Arrow McLaren. He's developed from being a mechanic and all the way up to principal. And I just think it's so cool, and he carries himself so well and speaks really well. So he's also just he's a human being. Like, he expects the same kind of performance and doesn't budge on that. But he's someone you can just have no problem talking to.
I love how chill Taylor always is, just like totally too. And Pato may be super animated on the radio and he's just like da 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 da. Taylor's just
He's so good on the radio. Taylor's one of the best people I've heard on the radio.
He's just like, yeah, and that's just always how he is, and I love that. I think that's important too, to have as a leader, as a team principal, as a team boss, because there's so much chaos anyway. You don't want to put that energy out there, with the other team if you're too much like that. Okay. So speaking of team bosses, there were two more that you wanted to mention, right? So
absolutely.
Yeah,
like the owners that I work with now, like Rick Pearson and Sam Schmidt are excellent. I mean, they have the same type of goals and drive, and they're always looking for the advantage here, and I really love that and really respect that about them. And it's fun to be on a team that's pushed and wants to take risks that are going to make us better in the end. So sometimes it can be a bit monotonous on some teams, but this one, they're always looking for the next advantage, next edge. And that's one of the great parts of working here too with those particular team owners. It's an adventure here for sure.
Well, good. And I mean, Arrow McLaren does have a well-rounded team boss kind of thing going on there. So yeah, so that's great. That's great to hear. And it's really good to see, especially, well, I mean, Rick and Sam as well, but especially to see Sam doing so well too with the I think that's something that we all love seeing, in the IndyCar community. Just any team owner, right? We like to root for those team owners. So good. Well, good. Well, I'm glad that you were able to share that with me as well. So okay. Okay, let's get to know you. Let's switch it up a little bit, and let's get to know you on a personal level. So you obviously have this love for racing, love for motorsports. Where did that passion come from?
So it's kind of something I've always been around and growing up around. So my dad raced motorcycles, my mom rode motorcycles. We were very into anything with wheels, my family. So I would follow my dad around to the racetrack when I was younger. He raced vintage motorcycles, and so I would kind of help out where I could. I really, couldn't do much, but I was there and really enjoyed the scene, the atmosphere and the people there, and just the technology and the competition. So I went to school. I was going to decide, like, am I going to go to engineering or follow my love for physics, or am I going to follow my love for art and the arts? And I decided to go with engineering because the school that I was looking at had a Formula SAE car. So that's Formula Society of Automotive Engineers.
Right.
And what that program does is students are tasked with building a Formula style car from the ground up. They have to do the budget for it. They have to present the car. They have to get sponsorship, and they have to build it. So then they take these cars and compete with other universities, and it becomes a pretty prestigious competition. So I jumped on board with that, which I thought was cool. And that was my first foray into four wheels. So that's where I started with four wheels, and decided that this is really something I want to do. My dad knew someone who worked at a local racetrack, who knew someone who had a race team. So through that loop, I got on with them at an amateur level and worked with them for a number of years. And from there, when the team kind of gave me my start, and that's how I got into amateur and professional racing for open wheel stuff. It was all SCCA and Formula Mazda stuff. But that team unfortunately fell apart. Budgets are always a problem in amateur racing. It's tough. Mm-hmm. It's really difficult down there. So I popped around teams, and it's all about who you know and when you know them, and then you just kind of progress. This is the natural progression if you want to keep moving up.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Your dad must be, well, both of your parents must be so proud of you, right?
Yeah.
That's cool. I could just picture all of you like on the bikes, like this little biker family.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Oh, I love it. Well, your dad did tell me, he's like, I used to take Kate to races. And I was like, that is so cool. Yeah, he's very proud.
I know.
Proud.
The entire internet knows my dad is proud.
But it's such a beautiful thing. My father passed away 3 years ago, but he used to take me to races. So I kind of feel like your dad is like becoming like my dad too. So I'm here for it. I'm here all for it.
Love it. Yes. I love it.
I know. So cool. Okay. Let's talk about that journey a little bit for a second. in IndyCar, and I want to know, what are the biggest obstacles you've had to face? And then also, has it been difficult as a female making your way into this motorsports world?
Some of the bigger obstacles I've had to face are really just within myself, I think, in challenging myself and pushing myself to learn more and to be better, to improve every day. That's something that's one of the biggest obstacles I think is typically is yourself. But when it comes to being a woman in the fields, I didn't really think it was a problem when I first got into it, because this is what I want to do, and I worked with a bunch of very open-minded and people who never made it a thing. Everything was just very kind of easygoing in a sense, and so I really didn't feel any kind of pressure being a woman with the team that I started with, which is John Walker Racing back in Pittsburgh. And I kind of carried that confidence and like, okay, I can do this. I'm welcome here. This is fine. I carry that forward. The hard part is not everybody thinks that way. And I've been fortunate enough to where the teams I'm on are all very like-minded individuals, from HVM back in the day to Rahal to Ganassi to here. Everyone's very open-minded. And what everyone seems to be concerned about is, can you keep up? Do you know what you're talking about? Can you perform? And when things go wrong, how do you behave? So if you have those things that you keep in check, and like you need to make sure that you know what you're talking about. Everyone has to prove themselves. Everyone has to study. Everyone has to think outside the box and move forward, because anyone, male or female, if they start to fall behind there, they're not going to last. And that's and it's probably better for them anyway. So the thing is, though, as a woman, as you approach people who don't think the same way as my teammates do, you have to prove yourself a bit more. So you have to make sure you don't make any mistakes. You have to know what you're talking about. In some situations, you have to speak up a bit louder. The opportunity to speak won't be presented to you. You have to take it, and that's okay. That's fine. Life's not fair, so it is what it is. And the other thing that's difficult is that you are very visible, and that everyone knows that the 10 women working in the paddock, everyone can point them out. People know my name, I don't know their name, kind of thing. So if you make a mistake, if you you carry yourself poorly, or you can't, everyone will remember it because you're so very visible. So that's a little bit difficult being a woman in this series like this.
Definitely. And that is different, right, than being a male. They're not under the microscope as much. Yeah, definitely. Were there ever days where it was really bad, or has it just always been good, and you've always, like, because you talked about proving yourself, and do you still feel like you have to prove yourself? Maybe not to your team, but just in general.
I prove myself to myself.
Yeah, no, perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to. I keep that in mind. I keep saying, like, okay, you need to be this. I see this person do this. I'm like, oh, I know I should start doing that too. Or I see them talking about or referencing different things. Like, okay, that's what I'm going to start working on. I'm going to start working on that. So I do feel like I'm proving myself, but I think it's more to myself, and I'm just letting the results kind of benefit the team overall. When it's been really bad, it's sometimes, people can say some crass things back and forth, and my way of dealing with it is just to kind of throw it back and to not let it hit and sit. I try to keep it very on the surface and say equally crass things back to people, which probably is not the best way to deal with things, but that sometimes it's necessary, and that kind of gives levels the playing field a little bit, I think. And then there's sometimes you go back to the hotel room and you think, like, wait a minute, was I could just be the jerk because of whatever, you start to internalize things a bit more, and then you can really spiral when you kind of take things out of context or think too much about things. It's really best to keep it on the surface and kind of let it go when it happens.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, I definitely don't do that. So I'm like the exact opposite, but that's why it
It's taken
doesn't.
years to get there. Yeah, yeah.
I wish I was more like that. That's funny. Do you feel do you feel that IndyCar is doing a good job recently, or I guess recently, yeah, or just in the time that you've been there, just really supporting you as a female into the world? Because I do see from the media side, we do see a lot of the equality, and they are trying to shine a light more and embrace, females a lot more, because we're kind of going through this, like it's not the 80s, right? We're here in a new era. So do you feel like yeah, IndyCar has done a good job with that?
Um, I think they always have. I think they're always a very inclusive group,
Mhm.
a very open-minded group. And I think that's good for them because that's the way the direction the world is going. And I think they reflect that very well. Um, I think that the women in the series in general have also done a really good job of keeping in touch
Mhm.
and having our own special moment, like we take a little picture in our fire suits in front of
Yeah.
the pagoda and like things like that. So I think IndyCar does a great job of not just making our roles visible, but
Mhm.
making sure that visibility
Mhm.
is pronounced. I guess you want to say that it's and what I think is important for women coming up is like, especially with younger women
Mhm.
who with girls and stuff in school, that if they can't see what they want to be, then there's a less chance of them wanting to be it. So the more they see it, the more that they'll just say, oh, I can do that too. So it's not so
Yeah.
much about like, oh, here's a woman, I can't believe a woman's doing this, this is amazing,
Mhm.
I didn't think she could do this. It's more like,
It
here's somebody that is hopefully going to inspire someone earlier in an earlier generation to move up, and that's what I think is really important.
yeah, definitely. It's a different, fresher as perspective, right?
Hmm.
I will tell you something that I have to tell you. Uh Born Racer, the documentary
Mm,
on Scott Dixion, you were heavily featured in that
mm.
documentary.
Yeah.
um you're in the pit box, you're in the pit box, and we see you in the pit box, next to the big guys, next to Chip, and next to, you're in there, and we hear you on the radio. And I have to tell you, that was such an eye opener for me, as a female. um we see women in the paddock. Sure, we see women. It's becoming more, like you said, it's more visible to see, across Formula One as well, and other other racing series. um but to hear you on the radio was kind of like that moment. You don't hear that. I think that was the first, I have to be honest, that for me, I'm sure it's not the first time in racing history, but it was the first time for me to hear a female voice talking on the radio to the driver. From the team, like, was huge for me. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. Um, I had a moment where I was like, I can do it too. I have to be honest. Like, yeah, I did, and I was thinking, like, this is great. And does does that ever like go through your head when you're in these moments? Do you ever sit back and reflect and think, um I'm kind of inspiring people right now? Does it ever cross your mind?
Not honestly, not during the race weekend because I'm focused, but
Right.
it's when people reach out to me and like a lot of young women in college are reaching out, and even men too are reaching out saying, hey,
Yeah, yeah.
like I heard you say this and do that, like I'm interested, how did you do this? So there's a couple girls that I keep talking to and keep kind
Hmm.
of like, this is who you talk to now, this is who you talk to now, and like let me show you over here kind of thing. So it's cool when you kind of step back and that humanizes a bit. Like, oh, hey, this is kind of cool. I am doing something that's out of the box, and um, I'm happy to be able to provide that. I mean, it's not my ultimate
Hmm.
goal, but it makes you feel like you've actually done something,
No,
contributed to
totally.
society in some way. Yeah, that
Definitely.
that you can be visible for those people. Yeah.
it's a nice side effect, right? Of
Yeah.
that's a nice side effect there for you. Okay, let's I want to go back real quick and talk about in your career, was there ever like a defining moment when you just thought, yeah, I've made it. I feel good. Like you know, so far, like you just had a moment where you're just like, yep, this is cool. I'm doing exactly what I want to do. I'm exactly where I want to be.
um, I think working for Arrow McLaren Sp was one of those defining moments. Like, this is good. This is what I want. Like, I've got what I want now. Just do something with it. So that was really, really good. Other moments, it's most of the time it's every Indy 500 when you walk out of Gasoline Alley. Woke up in 2020. When you walk out of Gasoline Alley and it's just the row of people. It's, man, there is nothing like that feeling. I've seen that so many people there gathered for this one event, and it's out of this world. It's the most special part of every year is walking out on race day. And even just like being there on, like, I go on Saturdays, the Saturday before the race, we're supposed to have off, but I always go there anyway. Just, it's my little thing. I like to go there. It's quiet. You kind of sit in that waiting period, which I just love. So that's just my little thing. People make fun of me for it because, you know, they say, but anyway, but I like to go on Saturday. Yeah. I like to go on that Saturday we're off.
What do they say to you?
Oh, they just say, okay, you're working too much, blah, blah, blah. You shouldn't be there. You know, go take your time off. Okay. It's just a day.
It's just a day.
It's just a day. It's fine.
It's fine. But it's also really important to, I think that in any job, right, especially if you're working for a job where you have so much passion, I think that you can easily get sidetracked and not necessarily forget your passion, but you get so caught up in the moment you forget to be a fan, right? Like we all start off as fans, right?
Oh, for sure.
So that's kind of like your fan moment where you're like, I'm just a fan today, leave me alone.
Yeah, exactly. Like that. I just get to enjoy this part of I'm not working, and, you know, I get to enjoy what I'm doing. Like, I do enjoy what I'm doing every day, but in a different light, just like you said, like, yeah, just kind of reminds you, like, okay, this is why I'm doing this. Yeah.
I'm doing it. Yeah, no, that's great to have. I think it's important to have those moments too, where you're like, yeah. Okay. I just want to ask you, was there like a proudest moment so far of your career? We talked about defining moments, but has there been one thing where you're just like so proud and you can just, and I know you still have a long career ahead of you, but just so far, proudest moment, what you got for me?
Proudest moment so far is honestly getting this role with Arrow McLaren.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really what I wanted to do. So yeah, I've like won races, and it's been with a phenomenal group, and then coming into this group, and for me, it's not the team. It's the fact that I went from run one type of role to the role that I wanted, and that for me is really my proudest moment, I think.
Yeah, no, that's good. I thought you were going to tell me something about Scott Dixion or just being part of a championship. Yeah, I really thought that's what you were going to say, but you know, I'll just circle back. It's just kind of hard to deny the specialness that Arrow McLaren Sp has. There's something there. There's definitely something there, and you're part of it. And no, like from the beginning, you know what I mean? You've come on the first year, and they've had a phenomenal first year, and this is an even better second year, and the best is kind of yet to come. I feel like
I agree. I think so. Yeah,
definitely. Good. Well, good. You're doing everything that, you know, makes you happy. It's good. That's good to hear. So good. All right. One last question, because I can't keep you forever, although, you know, I feel like we could talk forever. One last question, just, you know, for anyone out there, young, you know, young boys, young girls, young men, young women, anyone just trying to get into the motorsports industry, what's like the one thing you could tell people, one thing of advice?
One word of advice for people who want to get into the sport is to communicate and it's the getting into the sport is about who you know and when you know them. So the more visible you make yourself, the more you volunteer, the more that people know your face and know your name through email, through contact, through social medias, through LinkedIn. Just keep bugging people because they'll remember who you are. And it's about, again, who you know, when you know them. So be humble, introduce yourself, speak clearly, present yourself well, make people remember you. Apart from doing your homework, studying, getting hands-on experience, finish school, pay attention in school, get a good GPA, you know. Actually, the one thing that I did do that I always tell people is I went to school. I started on the Formula Car team in my junior year of college. Big mistake, because you should need to focus on school. So I don't regret any of the years I spent with that team because it was foundational for me and I loved it. But I have to reiterate to make sure you finish and pay attention to school because that's really what's important. So I tell everybody that. But number one thing is to make yourself visible, present yourself well, and keep the communication up. The more people hear your name and the more people who are aware of who you are, the better chance you have of getting in with somebody. Then you got to prove yourself, but
one
you got to
step
get
at a
that
time.
first step.
Yeah. And then you're like, and then what is that? Yeah. Then you have to prove yourself. Okay. No, but that's good. That's something that you know, you don't think about. You know, so that's good. And it's very practical advice too, which I like. So something people can actually do now. So perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much, Kate, for your time. Thank you for everything. It has been such a joy. So good luck for the rest of the season.
Thank you very much. It's such an honor to speak with you. And thank you so much for having me on this program. It's been wonderful talking to you. You're wonderful to talk to. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Kate. Okay. Well, you know, as if you need the good luck, but you know, hey, it could always, you know, it could always help. So, all right. Well, we look forward. I look forward to seeing more of you in the pits and, you know, in the paddock and things like that. So thank you again.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.